Hello, my Procreate lettery friends. It's Kristen, and I am back with this month's, which is July, Letter With Me session. So, our 5 words for this month are going to be obviously July, beach, barbecue, poolside, and vacation. So, those are 5 words that I tend to think about when I think about this month. If you live in another country, such as Australia, where our summertime is your wintertime, then you might not associate that with these words. But you feel free to practice them anyway. Okay, so in the downloads, this is the practice sheets. I will have the link, like I always do, I'll have the link to these as well as the brushes we'll be using. So when you import this into Procreate, you will have the practice here layer. Now this is a layer that you're actually going to write on. You can add as many new layers as you want. I just have a blank layer so you don't accidentally start drawing on one of these layers. And these are each layer is its own style. So if you turn one off, it will show the one beneath it, like so. So I'm just going to start, as always, with the first one, which is the basic monoline style. And we are going to go to our lettering practice brush set. And if this is your first time doing this with me, I have the brushes labeled so they match the layers. So basic monoline layer is the basic mono AF, which is just my initials, brush. Okay, so we're going to select that. We are going to go on a blank layer, and you can choose any color you like. I usually just go with black. Our palette for this month is this one, which is July AF, so feel free to use that if you want. And I like to zoom in and let me just test that to make sure that is the right size. You can play with the size. If your size is not the same as mine, I have mine on a size 8, so you can adjust it as you like. Of course, you can always go thicker or thinner. And here you could either start there like I just did, or I usually start with this downstroke here, like that, because that is one of the basic shapes of lettering, which is part of a downstroke and a descending stem loop, which just means it descends below the baseline and then it loops back up. But here, the way I have the lines, we're not stopping that high. We're going to stop here at this line. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, then I'm going to curve that one around closed, and then we have our exit stroke from the J, or it could be the entry stroke for the U. And then I have my underturn for the U, and then an exit stroke, which is another bit of an underturn, and then the stem of the L, an underturn for the Y, and then another descending stem loop. And this one I gave just normally a descending stem loop in basic lettering would look like that, like the J, but here I just added a tiny bit of style to give that a little bit more of a flourish. And again, that's just a stylistic choice on my part. Feel free to make it your own and do whatever you like with it. Same thing with any of these letters. So like for the L, you might have a loop for the ascending stem loop instead of just having the stem. And yours might look something like that, and that's perfectly okay. There are rules in lettering, but once you know what the rules are, then they're yours to break. So it's good to learn the rules and then learn how to break them. So I have for this capital B, just a little entry stroke there, a downstroke, and then starting at the bottom, come back up and loop around for the top part of the bee, and I lift my pencil and then loop around and kind of go through with a little bit of an exit stroke into the next letter, and then I lift my pencil. You can do this all in one stroke if you like, but you will have more control if you pick your pen up in between each one. Okay, then the E is based on the oval shape. The A is also based on the oval shape. And again, I talked about this in one of the previous Letter With Me sessions. You can draw your shape and hold it in place, and Procreate will snap it into a Quickshape for you. That will only work on like geometric shapes like circle, square, rectangle, triangle, star. Trying to think of the other ones. Like your basic geometric shapes. If you try to do, for example, like this right here isn't a geometric shape. So if I draw this compound curve here and hold it in place, that's what happens. And even if you go into edit shape, it doesn't give you the option to make it a curve. So you're stuck with these jagged lines. So let's undo that. Okay, and this is the same bee as before. So entry, downstroke for the stem. I do the top part of the bee, the bottom part of the bee, then the A. If you're good at drawing ovals and you don't need to use the Quickshape, then even better. Or even if you don't want that perfect look, maybe you want like a really cute, organic, hand-drawn looking piece that you don't want to look like it's a font, you want it to look like a human made it. Those styles are very popular and really well loved by a lot. So, you know, that could be your thing, your style, is that you don't use Quickshape at all. Sometimes, most times when I'm doing lettering and I have two letters side by side, I don't want my lettering to look, I want my lettering to look neat, but I don't want it to look like a font. So I will sometimes intentionally make one letter different than the other, but the same style. You know, so like I won't make one like this and then one you know, like really thin, because that's not the same style. Or I won't make it on an angle because that's not the same style. But maybe I'll just keep the same style, but instead of the exit stroke going through like this, I might have it like that. That way it's the same style, it's just a little bit different way of drawing an O. Or I might make that a little bit lower or something like that. That way it still looks, again, like a human wrote it and not a computer or a font. Okay, so let's continue with our pull side. And the D is a combination of the oval and the stem. And then lastly, our E. Okay, and last one is vacation, which I am not doing this summer because we are moving at the end of the summer. So we are super busy packing and organizing and downsizing and donating a lot of stuff, and in the midst of it all, tripping over so many boxes and bins. And it's like an obstacle course to go from one room to another. So no vacation for us. Maybe later, maybe next year. So one of the things, and this is another tip that I have for you, one of the things that you might find is when you're connecting your letters. So for example, I'm going to do this here, and you end there, and then let's say you start here, and your letter doesn't quite connect up the way that it should. So you could always go in and try to maybe fill that in a little bit. I've done that before. Or like if you're tracing this, make sure you stop inside and pick up inside that shape there, and then draw directly over that. Sometimes you might overextend it like this, and then you could always go back and erase it, or honestly I think it's just easier to do the 2-finger tap to undo it and start over. But as I'm lettering excuse me, let me go back in here and cross this T. As I'm lettering, I often do not line up my stuff correctly like that, and I have to undo it and go back and try again, and that's okay. That is the beauty of working on an iPad and in Procreate, is that you have this amazing undo feature. Okay, so if we turn off our practice sheets, you can see you're left with these nicely lettered words. So like right here, you can see that's not like a perfect meetup. Again, if you're going for perfect, you could always just go in and fill that in, or leave it as is and it will look imperfect, which is also beautiful in itself. Okay, so let's go open our Flourished monoline. Let's go to a new layer and choose our mono flourish brush. And now these are on an angle, so I like to tilt my canvas because I prefer drawing towards myself, because if I have it this way, I'm drawing on an angle, and that just doesn't feel natural to me. So I like to turn my canvas. You just use 2 fingers, and you can zoom out and zoom in that way if you're a new beginner. Okay, so with the Flourished, I start here at the top, and I'm going to draw down to do the stem of the J first. And I try to stay on this line and follow this line, and you see I went too fast, so I already started deviating from that, so I'm going to undo it and draw slow. If you start to lose control, you can pick up your pencil at one of these intersections, is where I recommend, so you don't see where you stopped and started, and then finish that flourish there. And now here I start at the bottom and draw up. And one of the things I talked about in an earlier letter with me session was using your hand to move as opposed to your just your fingers, or use your whole arm as opposed to just your hand, I think is what I'm trying to say. Because especially when you're zoomed in, I'm gonna keep my hand on the screen and just use my fingers. and it starts to get a little bit harder. You can see I didn't line that up very well. Whereas if you use your whole arm to move, that was much more fluid, right? So you have a little bit more control that way. And I believe that was in the first one that I did on the alphabets for these styles. If you want to go back and reference that one. Okay, so for this one, again, I went too fast. And then I curl it up with like a little dot at the end there. See, I didn't quite meet that up, so I'm just going to undo and try to cover that up this time. And then the A, I have a flourish on the bottom for that one. Now for the H, you can start here with the flourish, but I like to start with the actual pieces of the H first before doing the flourishes. So one piece of the H is this ascending stem loop, and then this overturn, but then that overturn goes directly into an exit flourish. And then I go back up here and continue to finish up that flourish. Okay, barbecue. And it is summer here and it's really hot here and I have my fan on and everything, but still my hand is like a little clammy because it's so hot. So it makes it a little bit more difficult to slide my hand, my arm or hand, whatever, on the screen of the iPad. So it might make it a little bit jumpy sometimes, like instead of just sliding nicely. And I do have a matte screen protector on mine. It's not just the iPad glass as it comes. And I find that the matte helps it to be, it gives the screen a little bit of texture and it's more like writing on paper and not on glass. So I really like that. And then this E is done all in one stroke. Okay, pull side. And you can see a lot of these capitals, I kind of, or uppercase or majuscules, whatever you want to call them. I always have a similar stroke to them. So I have this universal line of beauty, which then goes into a loopy flourish. And again, that's just my my style. You can absolutely change that up. Like I said before, you can even maybe extend that, or instead of following that flourish, you might follow something like that of a flourish. That might be a poor example because now that looks like an L, but you get what I'm saying. You don't have to follow this exactly. This is just here as a suggestion. So again, I have these two O's that are side by side, and this time I differentiated them by adding a flourish to one of them. So the S is kind of this curvy shape that curls up into a little dot there. My hand is so shaky. And I am, you know, complete proof that you can have shaky hands and still have nice lettering. And really the secret is just the settings and the brushes that I use. If you wanted to, you can even maybe curl that S up a little bit, give it a little bit more style. Okay, so vacation, we have our entrance stroke. If you have a hard time remembering to pick up your pen in between every stroke, it might be beneficial for you to use colors. So change the color. After every stroke, to give you a bit of practice. And picking up your pencil each time. And if that feels like really tedious going back and forth like that, one way you can keep this color palette on your screen is, you see at the top there is this little gray bar right here. If you just swipe down on that, it puts this mini palette onto your screen, which you can then move around. Let's put that over there. So after green was the yellow. And then blue. So that's another tip on how you can get that on your screen to stay, and also to give you more practice in stopping and lifting your pen or pencil. Okay, so let's turn that off, and this is what we're left with. Okay, next layer is the brushy bounce. This is where pressure sensitivity comes into play. So let's choose brushy bounce. And again, if you are new and this is your first time doing letter with me sessions, this brush is pressure sensitive, which means if I do light pressure and don't press hard on my pen, that's the stroke that I get. But if I do heavy pressure and push down hard on my pen, that's the stroke that I get. Okay, so and you'll only get that with an Apple Pencil. I think there might be another stylus available, but I'm not 100% sure on that anymore. There was one that I thought had pressure sensitivity, which was the Logitech crayon. So somebody had told me that that one definitely had pressure sensitivity, and even in the listing that I saw, it said that it had pressure sensitivity, but then people started purchasing it and it indeed did not have pressure sensitivity. So that was compatible with Procreate in the iPad anyway. Like, it may work on other apps in the iPad even, but it does not work with Procreate. Okay, let's change colors here. And this time I'm going to talk about where I am adding pressure and where I'm lifting pressure. So I'm going to start at the top, full pressure, push down, and lift up at the bottom. And then here, light pressure, I'm going to go up, and here start pushing down, and then release a little bit. Start with light pressure, press down as it starts to come towards you, let up as it moves away from you and goes into the next letter. Now you can see that line is a little bit wobbly. That's because I was going a little bit too slow than what I'm used to. And you can definitely fix that. Let's go back and I'll show you how to fix that. If you go into the brushes, you want to go into the brush settings, but I always recommend before you do that, duplicate the brush. Slide it to the left and choose duplicate. That way if you mess up here or something happens and you want to get the original back, it's still there. Okay, so let's go into Brushy Bounce, and under stabilization, we are going to turn the pressure streamline up. Why isn't it going? Let's just say about 50%. And the stabilization also about 50%. Okay. And now I could be shaky and still get a halfway decent line. Now you can go up those even more if you still see shakiness, but you have to go really slow. So let's try that. Let's bump that up, bump that up, and maybe even motion filtering. Let's do halfway. Now we're gonna have to go really slow. Because if you go fast, that's what happens. So you have to wait for the line to kind of keep up with you. Now that didn't go all the way down to the bottom because I lifted up too fast. So light pressure, heavy pressure, and then lift up. Light pressure as you're moving towards yourself, press down hard, and then light pressure as you're moving away from yourself. So basically with those settings, I could do, I can still get a straight line even though my hand is shaky. Okay, so there's that tip. So let's go to the next one, which is barbecue. Hard pressure down, light pressure, hard pressure, hard pressure down, light pressure up, and just remember it's not a race. You don't have to go fast. This color is kind of hard to see. In this video. It would be best on a darker background, actually. Let's go to the blue and do poolside. Now, if you are not wanting this on your screen anymore, all you have to do is hit the X and that will go back to the regular palettes. So for these O's, I'm kind of starting here at this line. I'm bouncing them up above the X height. And this S is going down a little bit beneath the baseline. Same as that. The exit of the D goes a little bit below the baseline, which makes it bouncy. Okay, and let me just go back to black. You'll probably be able to see it better. And actually, let me delete that brush. So I'm going to slide it and choose delete, and I'm just going to use the regular brush that I made these sheets with. Now that I'm looking at this, I'm not liking how that A is angled because all of our other letters are on a 90-degree angle. So this really should be more, I must have been going fast when I was making this one. I apologize. More up and down like that. Sometimes when I'm working, I get like so in the zone that I don't find my mistakes until after I've already put it out for people to use. Okay, and there's the last one. So if we turn that off, those would be our words that are left there. Okay, let's go to a new layer, and now let's go to the Flourish Classic and Flourish Classic brush. Again, these are angled, so I'm going to zoom in and tilt my canvas. Okay, and with the J, I'm going to start here at the top. I'm going to start with light pressure and then go into heavy pressure, and then release it for the light pressure to finish out that flourish. And then I'm going to complete the J by starting here, and I use light pressure all the way around for that part. Heavy pressure, light pressure. For our underturn, heavy pressure, light pressure for another underturn. And then here I don't start with the flourish. You can if you're practicing that, but when I'm making these I always start light pressure, heavy pressure. And now this is one where I didn't quite line up, so I'm going to undo that and try again. Light pressure, heavy pressure, and this automatically goes into a compound curve like that. So it's all one stroke. Then I go back and with light pressure finish up that flourish. And this one is another one that you can do all in one stroke, but if you struggle, you can pick up your pen wherever it intersects. So here, 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 any of these spots where the lines intersect, you can pick up your pen. So I'll show you what I mean. So let's say you're drawing and you get to here, and all of a sudden you feel like you can't finish up that, you can stop right there where it intersects. You can stop there and pick up and finish with that one. Now if you don't have shaky hands, but you still want to go slow, and that is definitely what you want to do in lettering that is like pen and paper, because if you go too slow on Procreate, let me show you what I mean. So if I go slow, well, first of all, you see how wiggly that got? I don't know if you could see those wiggly lines because I don't have the brush settings set that way. But also what happens is, let me finish the A and then I'll show you on undo that, because I don't like how thick that is there at the bottom. I want to kind of lift before I get to the bottom. So the transition from thick to thin is in the right place. But let's say I go too slow here. And sometimes what happens if you go too slow, you invoke the Quickshape and it looks like this. So you can fix that. If you undo that and you go to your wrench and go to preferences and go to gesture controls and go to Quickshape, you can turn up, like right now it's at 0.65 seconds, so less than a second. You can turn that up to the highest is 1.5, so you can go slower and it's going to take you a lot longer of, let me just hold it here. It took 1.5 seconds before it actually went into that shape. So that is another way that you can make custom settings more fit your style, depending on how fast or how slow you're lettering. But I actually do find that when it comes to me lettering, I go much slower on pen and paper than I do on the iPad. And then I go back and add that little dot there. And then I start with the ascending stem loop. Again, that's pretty wobbly there, so let's try that again. And then I go back in for the flourish. Okay, so I'm really hoping these little tips are helpful for you along the way. As Procreate starts to release more and more new features, such as that stabilization. They didn't always have that. That came with one of the more recent updates that they had. I will definitely share ways that you can use them to improve your lettering and your designs and use it to your advantage. Now normally, like a classic B would be that, but here I've just gone and added a little flourish to that, like so. And then let's finish that flourish. You could start with a dot if you wanted and then draw out from that, but I usually tend to do my dots last, and I'm having a really hard time not going slow enough to keep my transitions. Like you see there, I just went from really thick pressure to really thin pressure, so that's not a good transition there. So let's try that again. Thick to thin. Again, if that's really tough for you, go back into the settings like I showed you, duplicate, and go to stabilization, and turn these amounts up. But again, remember, you're going to have to go slower. So like right here, that should be thin, not thick. So I need to slow down. For that underturn. Now that looks much nicer. See how my hand is like jumpy? It's because it's really hot in here in my office in the summertime. And like my hand is sticking to the screen. But like I said, we are moving. And where we are right now, in these apartments that we're in New York, we have air conditioner units. So we only have 2 units, one in our bedroom, in our main bedroom, and one in our living room. And in this second bedroom is my office. There is no air. And the way our apartments are set up, there is also like no air flow. Like there's no breeze. Like I can't open a window when it's a nice day and have a nice breeze. So it's really frustrating. So where we are moving to, we'll have, I keep doing that, we'll have central air. So wherever I decide to have my office, it won't be so hot. Thank goodness. So future videos of these after September, maybe October, will hopefully be a little bit nicer than they are now. Okay, so for the S, for the curve, we start out thick, then go thin, and then go thick, and then go thin. This one might take a little bit of practice to get it right. So thick, thin, thick, thin, and then end with a little, I don't even know what you call that, like a little curled up dot. There's probably a name for it. In real, I don't want to say real, but in like professional calligraphy, there's probably a name for that, like a terminal or something, but I usually just end up making up my own. Now I'm going to undo this because I don't like how close this downstroke is overlapping the oval. Like I want it to kind of just touch the oval but not overlap it. So let's try this again. There we go, much better. And I'm going to stop and lift up my pen here because you could see if I would continue, it actually goes off the screen. So I wouldn't be able to finish that stroke anyway. Okay, and then lastly, vacation. Also, if you have any suggestions or questions or problems or issues that you're running into with your lettering when you're doing these, feel free to let me know, because I could take your suggestion and make it into a tip that I can share with you in the next Letter With Me session. So here I forgot to do that little dot or terminal on the C there. I don't even know if terminal is the right word. I could be way off. This is a big flourish here. Like, there might be a name for that flourish, but I just call it like a pretzel flourish because it looks like an upside down pretzel to me. Okay, so to do the T, I start here and then I do my cross for the T, but then I bring it back around to cross over like that. It kind of almost looks like a backwards ampersand if you turn it. Again, I did not follow that exactly, and that's fine. You really don't have to. Like I always say, these are guides. They're just suggestions. And that one, the exit stroke of that O goes right into the stem of the N. And then our overturn. And there you have it. And that line was a little bit wonky, but feel free to go in and, just like you would if you were writing on paper and you notice mistakes, you can just go in and fix it, or use your undo and fix it that way. So let's turn this one off. And there is our words. And if I zoom in without the sheets on, I can see some, like here, this is where I had the really wobbly E's. So I can go in and try to fix that a little bit. Let's see. Here, my two lines didn't quite meet up as I would have liked, so I just thicken that up a little bit, not too much, because you want your upstrokes and your light strokes that you don't have a lot of pressure. You want those to kind of all be the same. So if by making that thicker, it's going to throw off the look of all your other upstrokes, it might be better just to go in with an eraser and try it again, like that. So here with this D, I lifted too soon. So I would just go in and fill in some of those pixels. And what that means is, if some people get intimidated when you use the word pixels, but really a pixel is just, let me zoom in as far as I can. These little dots here is what is a pixel. One square is a pixel, and that is what makes up your words. So just by adding pixels, it fills in a little bit nicer, right? You can see there's 2 extra pixels there that are making it look like there's a bump in there. So you can go in and make that really small and erase those 2 pixels. That's a bad eraser to use. Let's use a hard brush. There we go. So that looks a lot better. Okay. Now let's go and move on to our final one, which is Quirky. And let's go pick our Quirky brush. Quirky AF. Now this one, if you have light pressure or hard pressure, is the same thickness. So this one is not pressure sensitive, so you don't have to worry about pressing down hard. You can just draw normally. And this style, I call it quirky because it's a mixture of lowercase and capital letters, but they're all on the same, they all touch the top and the bottom, even if, you know, because normally capital letters go all the way up and lowercase don't. And the way also that I have the settings in this brush is when you're doing down lines, they're thicker than, so no matter if I do hard pressure or light pressure, so this is light pressure, this is hard pressure, going up or down, you're going to have that thickness. But if I go side to side, light pressure, hard pressure, you can see these are thinner than this. So it's not pressure, it's not a pressure sensitive brush, it's just a directional brush. Is the direction you go is going to determine if you have thick or thin lines. So anything going on the diagonal line is going to be thinner, and anything going up and down on the vertical line is going to be thicker. So I hope that explains this brush a little bit. Now a C, let's say I messed up my C, but I hold it in place. A C will snap into a quick shape for you. And the reason it does that is because even though a C is not technically a geometric shape, it's based on one. So it's based on an oval. So if you were to continue this, that would be an oval. So that's why Quickshape works on some letters, but not others. Now with the B, again, if you're just wanting to practice and learn and get used to things, I would draw all these letters by drawing one and picking up. Drawing another, picking up. Drawing another shape and picking up. If you're wanting to not learn it by shapes, you could do it all in one, like that. Same thing with the A's. I always do my A's in two shapes like that. I do an oval and a stem, or you can do it all in one, which I generally don't recommend for beginners, but if that's your jam, then definitely go for it. I also personally, speaking about jams, you know, find what works for you, because when I struggle with letters, particularly S's, sometimes B's, I draw them backwards. So normally you would draw this way, but I will draw mine backwards. I don't know why. It's just something my brain just, I don't know, it's just easier somehow when I draw things backwards. I think it's because I'm focusing more that it's a shape I'm drawing and not a letter. Because when our brain wants to draw letters, sometimes we automatically go to our handwriting because that's automatic. We don't think about our handwriting. But when you're drawing a shape, your brain takes the time to say, okay, this is a line, this is a curve, this is whatever. So I think, I mean, I'm no expert, but I think that is why it's helpful for me to draw things backwards sometimes. So yeah, find your jam, find what works for you, find what's comfortable, find something that you can sustain, and work with it and use it to your advantage. So here's an S. So most people will draw an S this way, but I draw my S's this way. That's a little too curved. If you also notice, this style has a little bit of a curve to it, like a little concave, so it's not straight up and down. It just curves a little bit, just slightly, for the downstrokes. And finally, our overturn. Okay, and now let's turn that off, and these are the words that we're left with. So there you have it. That was our letter with me session for July. Definitely let me know what problems you struggle with or anything, and I will definitely try to add them to future, if not next month's, then future letter with me sessions. So I hope everybody has an amazing month, and I will be back soon with the stylized tutorial for the month. Thanks.